Welcome to the Love, Sex and Freedom podcast. This is where you're going to discover how to bring awakening into the body and into everyday life through powerful tantric teachings. Get ready to release, open, and step into your true power.
Every conversation that we had, I guess it's part of your nature, and I love talking about that too, but part of your nature is just constantly talking about sex and intimacy and like pleasure and orgasms and I remember the last time when we met in Bali, and you're basically me. It's like, so what's your sex life like? you just like go straight in there. And I really appreciate that. It's like, cut the bullshit, cut the fluff, and let's talk about some juicy things. Where's this coming from?
Well, I've just always been taught that from my dad, like sexuality is just another beautiful part of life. So, until I was around people with different conditioning, I didn't think there was any difference between talking about a body dance or having an intellectual conversation or a heart to heart. My parents were always open. My mum would after her and dad made love, we could hear her, but then she would also make it very obvious and we would see how radiant she was. And it's just always been something super celebrated in my life, in my kids' life. It's just, it's a beautiful aspect of human existence that creates the most beautiful thing on a planet, which is a baby. To me, there's nothing more beautiful than that. So why do we keep it behind closed doors? I think part of the dysfunction in sexuality, a big part of it, is because it is kept behind closed doors. And, I went to a Just Girls Catholic school run by nuns, and all my friends' parents were very strict and never talked about sex. And they were losing their virginity at the skate bowl at 14. And my house, that was very open and controversial, and some of the parents were unsure about me and my family and the influence. I didn't make love till I was 19. I was with him for 8 months before we made love. I haven't had many sexual partners. It's only people I'm deeply in love with, because we talked a lot about sex and how beautiful it is and that it happens when two people love each other. And, it was a normal thing, but not in a way that, it's casual. Normal in the sense that it's a beautiful expression between two people who love one another.
Nice. Well, welcome, Chantel Raven. I realized I didn't even introduce you. We just go straight in there too. What are you? You are a Tantra teacher / sacred health, sacred sexuality type mentor. Is that like a fair description of who you are, or how would you describe yourself?
I would say that I'm a seeker who's supporting other seekers and have a lot of experience in that. And Tantra is, definitely what I'm most passionate about, and the lineage that has transformed my life the most. But I also have so many modalities that I draw on. And sacred sexuality is one part of Tantra and one part of what I bring through, but it is something I'm extremely passionate about. So I'm also a writer and a creator. I'm the founder of Embodied Awakening Academy, and I've got over 20 courses and a practitioner training. So I'd say I would never describe myself as like a sacred sexuality coach or Tantra teacher. I would say, I don't even know what I would say.
How do you end up in that realm, in that field, in industry, basically? What made it kind of like your life's purpose and mission to help others? Like where is this coming from? Because I mean, actually, and the second part of the question would be, what is Tantra? Because I guess there's so many people, they don't really know what it is. They have probably a quite skewed idea of what it is, which is very different from the way how you would describe it. So maybe give us a little bit more of an understanding, what is this whole thing about?
Well, Tantra is life. It's the whole spectrum of life. It's the acknowledgement that spirituality is not separate to anything, and that all aspects of humanity are divine. And it's really where, if you're actually seeing that rather than being blind to that. So it's what I love about Tantra And what put me on the path initially, I was actually running a business called Harmonious Mother, Harmonious Baby. I had a little girl, and I'd just finished the Steiner teacher training and was very inspired by being a mother. It was like the happiest 5 years of my life for sure, was just dedicated, devoted to her. But when I was breastfeeding and in moments with her, I started writing, and I wrote songs, I created a CD, then I wrote a couple of books, and I started to support parents with sleep and spiritual parenting, and also recorded lots of meditations for new mums who were going through what I was going through. But to me, I was thinking like it must be so much worse for them, because I had a beautiful husband, I had money, I had a lot of experience in learning about the incarnation of children as souls and the whole process with that. So I'm like, God, if I'm struggling this much with so much support, what do other people go through? And felt inspired to support as much as possible. But in that process, I ended up going and staying in homes to support people, and noticing that there was this big difference between the impact I could make in homes where the couple were harmonious compared to when I could feel all of this tension with the couples. And I was married to my first husband for 10 years, and we would maybe have a few fights a year. Like, it was very unusual to me, all this tension and conflict in relationships that I was picking up on, and them not really respecting each other. So I'd be talking about what they need to do, and then one would arc up, and then the other one would get defensive. And I thought, I need to find out more about relationship dynamics and how to help them with that, because I could see how it was impacting the children. And so I started researching and reading lots of books, and came across really amazing communication practices that helped, but that made me want to look into it more. And then around that time, I was diagnosed with cervical cancer, and my father's somewhat of an esoteric master, and I grew up with a lot of principles of quantum physics just being normal, like that if there's something physical happening, it has an emotional and energetic component. So I knew that if I had cancer in my womb, there was definitely something going on with my feminine. And Dad, he's got huge libraries in every house he built for us. And, there was a book where you look it up and it tells you what the connection is. And I just started crying when I read it. And I'm like, I have to do something different, because meditation, even though I meditate, even though I think really positively, even though my life is immersed in personal development, I've still manifested this. So what else is out there that I can utilize as a practice to support me with this obvious inner conflict I have with my feminine? And I just put it out. I remember sitting before my altar and just saying a prayer and saying, please, if there's something out there that can help me, let it come to me. And the next day, when I was picking my daughter up from school, there was a shaman who was in town picking up his son, who was best friends with my daughter, who later became my partner. And I was drawn to him. I met him. He ended up giving me some healing sessions that were extremely illuminating. I realized how much repressed anger I had. I realized that sexual energy can be utilized as a healing modality. I had plenty of realizations. And then he introduced me to Tantra, and my life completely changed, completely.
Wow. There's a lot of new stories for me even in there that I wasn't really aware of. So
yeah.
great.
There's always new stories.
Yeah, true. With you, definitely. So if you now fast forward, we're in the here and the now, and you said okay, you researched a bunch about relationships and these dynamics and the tension that often happens, and then all the knowledge and the wisdom that you've gained through spirituality and Tantra and sexuality. What are some of these, especially in the realm of sexuality and partnerships, what are some of these major challenges or obstacles that you see with your clients, or even in day-to-day life?
I think with all spirituality, a lack of presence, thoughts that are in the past, in the future, how things should be, how things are programmed to be. And when it comes to becoming really orgasmic, when it comes to being able to communicate from the heart with vulnerability instead of all the bullshit, I think it's really about being fully present to sensation, to energy, to love, instead of the tick-tocking of the mind. So all of the practices that I teach around sexuality and around relationship, communication, harmony are in some way centered around the principle of presence. Because if you think of all of the beautiful aspects of the feminine, flow, creativity, vulnerability, aliveness, effervescence, intuition, radiance, beautiful mess, beautiful feelings, like just a whole range of unpredictable, untamable, unstoppable expressions of emotion and God knows what, And then when we look at the masculine and see the beautiful qualities of steadfastness and focus and silence and being able to follow through and be committed and disciplined, then when we bring these qualities together, I think that it's in that harmony that creates wholeness, which Tantra is always pointing towards, is can we become whole? And in the center of that, like an image is just coming to mind of like, here's the feminine, here's the masculine, and then in the center is presence. And when we can be fully present, then naturally with the silent mind, she has permission to be fully alive. Naturally with the commitment and discipline, her intuitive whispers and creative flow have a direction in which people can make manifest whatever their dharma is, whatever their purpose is. And then in the mix of all of that actually is meditation, and sexuality is a meditation. Sex is a meditation. And when we can take it out of performance and take communication out of who's right and who's wrong and focus on actually sexuality and communication being a meditative experience where we're staying anchored in the here and now and sharing what's here now and bringing all of us to sexuality, to communication, that's an absolute game changer. And the most life-changing thing for me as far as sexuality goes with Tantra is that I've discovered it is a healing modality. It's one of the most important aspects of relationship. If we're making love more and in the meditation of breath, sound, movement, and energy, then we're going beyond the personality and merging at a soul level, and then just allowing whatever's here now, allowing trauma to be pushed out of the body, allowing amazing pleasure, allowing us to be responsive and actually, as women, speak up and either move a hand away when it doesn't feel good, or slow down and pause, or ask for what we need, and for men to be in that presence so that life isn't just autopilot. Sex isn't just autopilot. Life isn't just on immediate gratification and impulses, but there's something deeper where we're breathing through the whole body and connecting at an animal level, at a heart level, and at a consciousness level in and out of the bedroom to whatever we're relating to.
Yeah, beautiful. It reminds me of when I talk to more women than men, actually, I always hear that they have quite, so to speak, terrible sexual experiences, or a terrible sex life, and it goes almost like beyond the sex life itself. It's like, well, that's just what it is. It's almost like there's not even desire. Well, maybe there's a desire to make it better, but then there's not they don't have the tools in order to make some shifts and changes, and they just accept the fact that this is what it is, And I personally think it's twofold, the reasons why this is happening. I think most and foremost, it's men just not having that presence and that sensitivity of feeling into the moments. So a big part of a bad sex life, I would actually contribute to men, unfortunately. And yet, on the flip side of things, there's also an element of women that are not speaking up. They're not really sharing what they want. They're staying very silent. And I feel like now we're kind of going into the topic that we, prior said, we want to talk about, what are some of these secrets that we can use? I want to have it correct. What are some of these secrets to express your needs in the bedroom for more pleasure with him?
You need to be very attuned to yourself for a start. So a lot of women, they'll complain about not having good sex, and it's a reality and it's a fair enough complaint. But actually, how attuned are you to what you need? How attuned are you to what you want? How attuned are you to your present moment? And, I always attract very present lovers because I wouldn't even be able to not be with that, because that's what I'm used to here. So first of all, be the lover that you want to be. Explore your body, explore the inner terrain of your soul with a lot of presence. And what that means is your emotions aren't just arising from thoughts. There's those emotions, and they're not interesting really. But what's underneath that, which is the deep feeling, goes beyond thought, where you're in the moment and you're having an experience and you're realizing what you like, what you don't like, what your boundaries are, how you really feel about this situation. And that's a whole other conversation. But as far as sexuality goes, when a man is going too fast, especially at the foreplay stage or even during sex, pumping too quickly, moving too quickly into penetration, that's the most common complaint. He's, too fast, too quick to penetration. And it can be hard for us not to just tolerate or go into pleasing, especially because pornography and religion are the two main informers for most people of sexuality. And one is saying, be guilty and ashamed, which doesn't really encourage self-pleasure or to actually be connected to pleasure and desire. So you don't even know what that is at a real level. And then the other one is pornography, which is, a man ejaculating all over your face after like 1 minute, or, putting it in really quickly. And it's just very crass and goal-oriented. So a lot of women tolerate because they just think that's what it is. So re-education is a really good first step to know what you need, actually. If you don't know what you need, you can't ask for it. So I can share that with you because I've been doing this work for a very long time. And I've also only ever had sexual experiences that are orgasmic, even pre-Tantra. They just got more orgasmic and more ecstatic. So, and also I've worked with thousands of clients. And read a lot of books. So what I can tell you need as a woman for the ultimate ecstasy and bliss is at least 20 minutes of warming up, at least 20 minutes of a man connecting with your body. And that doesn't mean you're just laying there while he's giving to you. You can be responsive, you can be touching him, but it's really understanding that it's a woman's heart that opens her sexuality fully. And our sexual energy, because it's connected to the heart, we need to feel not that a man is just going straight for our yoni or straight for our breasts and preparing us for penetration. A lot of women, they think something's wrong with them. And it's like, no, actually, you're normal. No woman is ready that quickly, and no woman likes just her nipples and her pussy to be the first thing that are touched. So it's hard for men, and we have to talk to men about the fact that even though we can touch their cock straight away because that's their positive pole and that's the beginning of their turn on, it's kind of like a spiral. So here's a man's sexuality is his cock, right? And then his job is to breathe it through the rest of his body and spiral out. But for a woman, our skin is our most sensitive sex organ, and it's the circumference of our body and all of these erogenous zones that are more subtle, which actually then open up our sexuality the most. So it's like touching from the outside in. So it's very different, which is part of the cosmic joke, is that we're wired in an opposite way. So we need lots of touch all over our skin. We need to be teased. We need different styles of touch, sometimes a bit faster and grabby, sometimes a bit slower and more sensitive. And we need to be aware of our erogenous zones outside of our clitoris and our nipples. So if whoever's listening now, if we just take a moment to close down the eyes, and I'm going to support you just to lightly touch erogenous zones that are not as obvious. So just begin with your head. Just bring some touch to the top of your head and start massaging gently. Maybe you want to just like pull your hair a little bit. Just feel what that's like, just to touch your head with some sensual energy. And then touch your face, touch your lips, touch your neck, down the sides of your neck. Maybe even apply a little pressure around your throat. And I'm doing this very fast. I just want you to get a picture of how your body feels. And with stroking the skin and stroking around the body. So stroke the shoulders, stroke down the sides of the breast, the sides of the body. Connect with your womb space, your stomach. Just give your womb a bit of a rub. Come down to your inner thighs and brush up towards your yoni from your inner thighs, right? So like that was 20 seconds. Obviously, it would take a lot longer, but imagine if a man enjoyed touching your body as much as he enjoyed being inside of you, and you felt that. That's what opens your sexuality. I remember one of my lovers who was very quick to like he would escalate very quickly into primal. And I could just feel that even though he was doing all the right things and was tantric and knew how to give foreplay, I could still feel this urgency in him to penetrate me. And I said to him, I want you to enjoy touching my body as much as you enjoy being inside me. And he was just like, whoa, say that again. And it was an absolute game changer for him. And he so loved that. And he realized that he wasn't really enjoying my body. And then that's all that foreplay is, because some men get confused and they're like, well, what am I meant to do for 20 or 40 minutes? Because it's 20 to 40 minutes, depending on the woman. And I'm like, just enjoy. Like a woman's body is beautiful. So know that you need that time to warm up. There are thousands of nerve endings leading from the clitoris to other parts of the body. And you need that stimulated. And then when they do, start connecting to the inner thighs and more towards the pussy, you want to be begging for it before you're penetrated. It doesn't have to be literal, but your body's writhing and you're like, you can't wait for him to enter you, rather than like feeling this pressure to be wet and open and both of you are trying to get you wet. It's so dissatisfying. And then if you are entered, even if you are wet, if you haven't had that warm-up period, you're going to dry. I hope this isn't too crass for your podcast, Sash, but
hey, I'm so used to you like using cock and like all these words all the time anyway. So there's no, come on, babe, you know this.
So, you'll feel dry quickly, but if you've been warmed up and you've been teased and you can't wait for him to enter you, then you're going to stay really juicy. And then it doesn't end there, the teasing. It's like if a man is just entering you and pumping the whole time, it's going to eventually not feel good. So we want ebbs and flows. You want to be able to ask for pauses. You want to be able to say, hey, slow down, with a lot of compassion and understanding. And, some Tantra teachers teach that you have the conversation with the man before sex and you say all your boundaries and your desires and what you need. I'm so not into that. I just think it can be very emasculating and put a man in his head. Even though I'm a Tantra teacher, I've never told a man what to do in bed. I do, however, move his hand away from my nipple if he is going there too quickly and put it to another area of my breast. Or if I feel like, we're having sex and he's wanting to bring me to orgasm, and so he brings his hand to my clit and I'm not quite there or wild enough for that point yet, I'll bring his hand up to my heart. So removing his hand is really good. Or, if you're feeling that pumping is just too much and overwhelming and you're not enjoying it anymore, just saying, hey, can we just pause for a moment and look at me in the eyes and just breathe together? So as women, we're the initiators of tantric sex, because tantric sex is is a very feminine sexuality because it's not linear, it's fluid and in flow. And I do want to say that women need to take responsibility at another level for bad sex from the point of view that so many women are stressed, not taking any responsibility for discharging stuck energy and stuck emotions in the body. We're blaming the man, but actually you're just goal oriented as well and trying to get your click orgasm to have some fucking stress release. So sex is not stress release in a tantric context. It's not, coming together and this works for you to get you hard. This works for you to get you wet. We follow the same thing. We come together and then the woman has her orgasm and then the man can. That's not it. It's a sacred dance that's a mystery every time, where you're moving together, you're breathing together, you're staying attuned to your body, you're able to ask for what you need as you're making love, verbally and non-verbally. And actually you end up from that place, breathing, sounding, moving, really important with all of that. You end up from that place having full DMT release. And it's like this amazing experience of oneness with your partner and with God or spirit. And you can only understand that if you experience it. And you can only experience it as a woman if you start saying what you need and know that the biggest thing that you need more than anything else is for a man to tantalize you, both leading up to penetration and during penetration. You also need novelty and newness, right? So just let it be what it is, the sacred dance of that moment. Sometimes you might cry because there's a lot of emotion happening. In this last challenging month I've had, there hasn't been a time that we've made love that I haven't roared or cried. And my partner doesn't stop making love to me. He keeps penetrating me with lots of love. And then there's an even deeper intimacy at the other side. And I'm actually loving being penetrated by his love as emotions are moving and, whatever emotion in me I can't feel without the power of sexuality and love is coming up to be healed.
Yeah, I hear that. I find it interesting that you said, I agree. Of course, we both need to take responsibility for what's happening in the bedroom and experiencing pleasure or not experiencing pleasure. And when it comes to this education, one thing that was really surprising to me, I talk about this a lot, is when I was on my tantric practice of semen retention. And then I had lovers and, we were making love and I told them, look, I'm not going to come. I'm not going to ejaculate. That's just part of my practice right now, is to play and work with that energy in different ways. And I had all of them, and this was more than a year and a half long process, right? I had to educate them because their understanding of intimacy and sex meant sex is not over until he comes. Mm-hmm. It's not complete. It doesn't feel fulfilling. There was so much programming and conditioning that women have experienced, which was really surprising to me because, obviously I wasn't, confronted with that before, but now all of a sudden I had to tell them, look, can you have sex and intimacy and you don't come? It's yeah, of course, it can be beautiful. It's well, why would it be any different for us men? Why can we not have a similar experience? And I don't want to come, or I cannot come. In this case, it was a very conscious choice not to ejaculate. And yet here I found myself in a situation where I started to educate my partners of no, it has nothing to do with it. It's a totally different practice. And there's nothing sex is good or bad just because I come or not come.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And I feel like there's the conditioning that sex equals ejaculation being the end. And there's also the incapacity for a lot of people to call themselves to that present time awareness of sensation and enjoyment of the connection without having a goal. And then we come back to that meditative aspect. If you're not a meditator, it's not going to be very easy to engage in tantric sex because you're going to want an end goal. You're going to want something to strive for because you don't actually know how to be present. And one of the biggest hurdles that people face in experiencing true happiness and peace and emotional health is this incapacity to be fully present. And then it's the same with sexuality. So, you know, what's really helpful, the practice that I give to women is to meditate, but also as women, it's nice to bring soma into meditation. It's nice to bring the body into meditation. So I just say take 5 to 10 minutes a day, put some beautiful sensual music on, and just drop in and intentionally connect with pleasure. Just have this intention. I'm going to connect to pleasure in my body, and start moving your hips and start touching your whole body with the music, and trust the natural impulses of your body and just feel what happens when you are totally present with yourself. And sometimes, especially the hips, have a lot of suppressed emotions. Sometimes as we touch ourselves and get present, emotions come up, and then just allowing those emotions and starting to be the lover that you want, starting to be the partner that we want, who is totally present, who can hold space and witness without judgment and create safety for big pleasure states, big feelings to arise and to be alive in you. So that would change your life. If you got nothing from this podcast other than spending 5 to 10 minutes doing that, and my Spotify playlists have lots of yummy music, Chantal Raven on Spotify. So ladies, if you're needing some saucy music, I find music very evocative and it turns me on. And the other thing is, some Tantra teachers are like, don't fantasize. I think that's bullshit. I think if fantasizing is in the right context, it can be really beautiful. And by the right context, I mean, you're not going into fantasy and like fantasizing about a relationship with a guy that turns you on, but you're just using it as a catalyst to create some charge. So Esther Perel, who's an amazing leader in the field of, you know, sexuality and relationship, she says that it's natural for women to be turned on with novelty and that strong romance and connection that's there at the start and the mystery, right? So if you've got a connection with a guy and you're really feeling that kind of spark and the novelty and the mystery there, then when you're coming into intentionally focusing on pleasure, if you're finding it difficult, you can bring him into your field of awareness, right? And allow that energy to move you, and then make it your own and feel it in here. But don't make yourself wrong for anything sexually. It's like explore, experiment.
What would you say to women who say they don't pleasure and please themselves, and they don't even know like their own zones of pleasure really? And how does that translate into the bedroom with the man?
So she's desensitized in every area of her life if she's desensitized sexually, right? And this is the problem of this whole fucking world, is that everyone's so desensitized because everything's about striving for the future and being on phones and distraction and technology, that we're not actually here present and fully alive and receiving the beauty of the wind, of nature, of the love that's here. We're always fucking up in our heads. So I would say that she needs to learn to start being with herself and sensitizing herself. So self-pleasuring isn't always easy to begin with, but, you know, there are erogenous zones that work for every woman, like, you know, like the head, the lips, the face, the neck, coming down the sides of the body, around the nipples, the womb space, the inner thighs, the feet. So it's also about telling them to explore these areas, because a lot of women, they still have very strong associations of self-pleasure, meaning that they're getting a sore wrist and, you know, escalating to a clitoral orgasm as quickly as possible.
No shit, really?
Oh, totally. That's how most women self-pleasure.
That they're getting a sore wrist?
Yeah, because you have to go really fast to get all that stimulation happening, or they're using a vibrator.
Interesting. Okay, that's new to me.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't think I've ever heard a man says like, yeah, I'm getting a sore wrist from like, jerking off too much.
Well, I think it's easier for men to get to ejaculation than it is for women if they're using their hand. They have to like really focus on a lot of stimulation because they haven't opened their heart first. So it's relying on flesh and friction. And that's all vibrators and fast movement of the finger is. It's flesh and friction creating a result. Like any kind of science, you put two things together, this was what eventually happens. I mean, some women can't orgasm even with that. And, part of what really, I already was quite sensitive, my body, but nowhere near as much as I am now. And tantric massage really, really supported that process. So I would also recommend to those women that they receive tantric massage and that they practice doing nothing and just being in a receptive, surrendered state, which is very hard for a lot of women and people because this masculine mode of doing rather than a more divine masculine embodiment of being and stillness is so much more accepted in our culture, so much more common in our culture, and everything in our world is much more geared towards that. So having tantric sex is so much more than just what's happening in the bedroom, because you're not suddenly going to be able to be present and sensitized in your body and open and being able to breathe and sound and move and be really connected suddenly in the bedroom if you're not feeling connected, sensitized, open, receptive out of the bedroom. So receptivity and surrender are really important components of full body pleasure. So how receptive are you to love? How receptive are you to sensation?
Mm-hmm. So when you have like, let's say, let's create a scenario. You have a couple and she's not really happy with the sex life. And he is like, because of that lack of presence and because of that lack of sensitivity, he thinks everything is great. Mm-hmm. Now she's not really bringing it up. What's the process that you take your clients through or couples through in order to actually make some shifts and changes that is positively impacting their sex life?
Well, first I'll try what I said. I'll speak to just her and say, hey, like, all of these practices I'm recommending, plus getting her to speak up during the act and really stay attuned to herself and be able to say pause, or can you touch me for longer, or can you see if you can enjoy touching my body as much as you enjoy being inside it, all of these things and things that are specific to her, and to stay connected to him and say it in a beautiful, loving, sensual way. If that doesn't work, then I'll have a couple session with them together, and then I'll guide communication where she expresses her gratitude for all the things she loves about him sexually, and then says, are you open to hearing more about what I desire and what I need in the bedroom? And then I would guide her to share that one at a time and let him have a chance to respond, whether he's open to that. And I mean, also, I will sometimes just be straight up and do a compatibility session and be like, do you want tantric sex? Are you interested in learning about it to the man? And he says no. And her whole thing is she's unsatisfied sexually and wants it to be slower and more attuned. So I'm like, you guys are incompatible. I also say to women, if they're in the embodiment of tantric sexuality, like, find out from him, are you a tantric lover? Either find out through other means or ask directly. And then if he's not, ask, are you open to Tantra and learning about Tantra and what a woman really needs to open herself up to full ecstasy? And then if he says no, I would stop the date there. So I recommend that, because sex is such an important part of a relationship. It's the thing that differentiates friends to lovers, like friends to a relationship. What other difference is there? Like, I feel like my partner is my best friend, and then what makes him not just my best friend is the fact that we make love every day. So it's just pretty obvious to me how important it is, and it's not always obvious to couples, so I make sure they know how important it is.
Well, I mean, it becomes way more challenging all of a sudden if you're married, maybe you have a family. And then at some point, it's like you come to us like, well, actually, we're not really compatible. because he
I
wants
think
this.
it's a myth, though, that it has to become more challenging. Like 2 days after I had my daughter, I was making love again. And I never didn't like 2 kids, a business. At any point in my life, that's what I've always had. And my libido has never changed. I'm perimenopausal and hasn't changed. If anything, sex got better between myself and my husband after we had kids, because we got these 2 beings that we both just were madly in love with, and that increased the love between us. So it's like anything in life. What's the priority? How much are you prioritizing actually engaging in the most miraculous act capable of humans? Like, you're fucking merging bodies. And this act is what creates life and keeps the evolution of humanity going. Like, why wouldn't you do that every day? Like, it's so beautiful. And there's always time for anything we prioritize. Everyone has a shower every day, right? Everyone eats every day because their body needs it, brushes their teeth. It's like, what about the life force energy inside of you? How much attention do you want to give that? And it's so good when you can just get out of the mundane. You need sex even more when you have kids, because it supports you to remember, this deep love, this deep communion. One of the things that women need to ask for is romance often, because without romance, especially with the family, we're not going to be anywhere near as open. So all of my partners know from the beginning, like, don't be complacent with me. I like to be romanced. I like to be taken out in nature every day if possible. I love adventures. I love travel, all of that. Novelty and romance is what fuels my Shakti and what fuels my appreciation for you as a man. So there's rarely a day that Matisse doesn't take me to a sunset, to a forest walk, ocean swim, sometimes a combination of all 3. If he hasn't surprised me with something extremely romantic for a few weeks, I'll remind him. So it's like feeling that. And Esther Perel also talks about this. She was actually the catalyst for me realizing that I wasn't just a princess and that actually all women need romance. I was very happy when I heard that. I'm like, I'm not high maintenance. My first boyfriend used to call me very high maintenance.
I think you said something really nice, which is still stuck with, it's still with me, when he says, like, be the lover or become the lover that you want him to be. Mm-hmm. Something. Mm-hmm. Can you dive a little bit deeper with that? Because I think it's such a beautiful way, not just for women, but also for men. It's like, well, if I want that type of lover as a woman, is like, am I also showing up as that lover the other way around? Mm-hmm. Right?
There's so much I can say about that, because I'm so passionate about this topic. So I'll try to be as concise as possible. The first thing
if not, I'll stop you.
The first thing is that whatever your nervous system is most accustomed to, whatever is your comfort zone, is going to just naturally be what you accept from life and from others. So if what you're used to is this inner soulmate who loves the shit out of you, who takes you on dates, who touches your whole body, who in the shower, instead of when you're washing yourself, you're thinking, oh, put on weight here, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. You're soaping yourself up and you're appreciating your body and you're feeling all the curves. And instead of being focused on the perfection, you're focused on the softness of your skin and the beauty of the feminine form. Then, if you're used to all of that, and then you're with some guy who is not romantic, who goes straight for the jugular, and who doesn't appreciate anything other than perfect gym bodies, you're not going to be interested. It's not even your reality. And the other part of that is that the universe is always going to respond to what you're projecting. And what you project is whatever your beliefs are. So what do you believe you deserve? And are you giving yourself that? Is that the biggest common denominator of your life? So, to me, the most important things in a relationship is fun, ease, depth, and great sex, right? Now, if my life outside of relationship and my other relationships are not fun, easeful, deep, and the sexual furnace isn't being stoked, then that's going to be so unfamiliar to me. I'm not even going to be attracted to that. And I'm definitely not going to call it in, right? Life is projection and reflection. What we project gets reflected back. So you have to do the inner work to change the beliefs where you think you should tolerate what you don't enjoy in bed, where you think that it's a man's responsibility to make you happy, where you're not giving yourself the life that is the full, rich life, which is just going to be even more amazing when you meet a man who's in resonance with that. And that's not to say you're not going to come across challenges, but what it is to say is that when those challenges come up, you're going to deal with it in a similar way as you deal with it internally. And most people, when challenges come up, they just distract and avoid and go into their addictions, or they fight and get fucking crazy at someone. But what if your internal reality when challenges came was that you really held yourself and loved yourself in that, and even sometimes brought some sexual energy through your body to support trauma to be eliminated from your body or stuck energy? Then guess what? If you're doing that when you're with a man, he's not going to run, he's not going to fight, or if he does, you'll call him back to power. Of course, we all get a bit fucking crazy sometimes. But the most consistent energy that you're receiving is going to be the reflection of how you're handling things inside, right? So if you can hold yourself, you just naturally won't tolerate not being held, and you'll attract someone who can hold you in your life. It's just natural law.
Yeah, and I guess you can kind of so easily apply this to the bedroom as well, right? If you want a specific type of intimate experience and then you don't get that from your partner, then like, do you hold yourself accountable to like, no, I don't want this, I want this? And like actually standing up for yourself, for lack of a better word, and that often doesn't really happen. And we're just tolerating a bunch of things that are not really aligned. And then sooner or later that becomes the new norm, and then we're accepting this as like, oh, that's just what it is. And then you go even further lower because that's just the standard that you set for yourself. And I find this so often.
And you don't know any better. Like if you're not exploring your own body and finding ways to turn yourself on and to really be with yourself and hold yourself and touch all the beautiful parts of you and warm yourself up, then it's not even a new norm. It's just a norm. It's like, okay, well, this is what I do for myself. This is what I'm getting here. And it's normal. Whereas I'm all about naturalness these days and understanding that naturally you are not going to tolerate the opposite to what you're used to. So if you're used to being well treated and well fucked here within your own being, you're not going to tolerate less than that. It's not going to happen. So start to fuck yourself really good. Start to hold yourself really good. Become your best lover. Become your inner soulmate. And I have a free offering, Tantra 101, that actually took me a year. It was going to be a paid offering and things happened. And then we needed a free offering. And I'm like, I spent a year writing that and nothing ended up happening with it. So it's now a very in-depth free offering. If you go on Embodied Awakening website or Instagram, you'll see it in the link in bio on the homepage. Download it. Because it's all about owning your yes, owning your no, owning your desires, sacred sexuality, communication, and inner union. And, it's so cliche that you're the one you're looking for, but it's fucking true. Until you can feel happy and turned on in here, you're not going to experience that with another. It's kind of like people who think they're going to move countries or get into a different relationship. Oh, everything's going to change. If you haven't changed, fuck all's going to change. You're going to keep attracting those same patterns. So make the decision. Make the decision to get out of your comfort zone and love yourself really good, right? In self-pleasure and in life, because pleasure is not just sexual. Start to invite more pleasure into your life. And that sounds easy, but actually people struggle with that more than being in the shit because they're used to being in the shit. So start to actually intentionally connect with pleasure every day through that practice and start following it more as an absolute fucking must until it's in your comfort zone, that actually your life is so filled with pleasure, and then your relationship will naturally follow that.
No, I absolutely love that. And I can even, like, from my own experience, I can talk about this too. There were definitely times in my life when someone asked me, like, when we talk about pleasure and like outside of the bedroom, just like pleasure in life, I'm like, what does it mean for me? It's like, to be honest, I work, I work out, like, there was nothing, like, I was like, I don't even know, there was really like a gap that I realized, oh my God, like, what does that actually look like for me? I don't know. Like, I hang out with some friends, we go for dinners, and it's like, but this is such a surface level type of explanation of pleasure, and you talk about like, go in the shower, feel your hair, touch your skin, and like, I get it completely now, but back in the days, I'm like, I don't know, like, there was a huge gap in my own understanding of who I am at a time, for sure. And you see
and
this
that's
a
where
lot.
meditation comes in again, because when you can be in the nothingness, when you can do absolutely nothing and watch the thoughts instead of the thoughts guiding everything, not resist them, not chase them, you learn to actually just be. And you can't actually, even if you're in the most pleasurable environment, on a boat, in the middle of the ocean, with beautiful food, $600 champagne, are you really going to enjoy that if your mind is just going and you're going with it and you can't actually be present to sensation? Of course not.
Yeah.
And same with sex. So start meditating. And meditation doesn't have to just be Om Shanti and you're in stillness straight away. For myself and for most women especially, and for the feminine in all of us, we need to discharge some energy first. So we're not forcing ourselves to sit there when there's all this tension in the body. So, shaking for a bit before you meditate, dancing, growling, having a cry, getting some energy out, and, spending 10 minutes really consciously activating a sympathetic state and releasing adrenaline, and then naturally moving to parasympathetic and the deep let go of nothingness. I feel like that's a much more authentic way of meditating. Speaking from someone who's explored Vipassana and TM a lot, and then have explored this practice a lot. And my meditation is so much more authentic after I've released adrenaline.
Yeah. I can relate to, like, that meditation really made a big difference in my life too, when it comes to experiencing pleasure in life, for sure. And like, even the small, very subtle things of just like watching the sunsets, or seeing the same garden here in my house, seeing the same garden over and over again, and seeing these beautiful hibiscus flowers or whatever. It's like, I can look at them and I can really appreciate them now. Back then when I was a younger man, like, I'm like, it's just a flower, whatever. Like, there was not this appreciation for beauty. Like, for me, I always bring this back, like, rather than pleasure, I would probably say beauty. Because there's beauty literally everywhere. You can see it everywhere, even like the grass on the ground. Like, you can find beauty in there too, if you want to, if you have that presence and you train your mind and train your eyes in some ways, and it really helped me.
Yeah, beautiful.
Where do we take this from here?
I have to leave to pick my son up in like 5 minutes, just to give that warning.
Then why don't we call this like the mic drop?
And
don't try to, like, because I feel like, okay, where do we take this from here now? Because I feel like we touched base on a bunch of different topics already. And thank you for these practices, actually. I think they're quite valuable, and I think I hope women are actually going to use them. And I'll find my own way.
Try that. Try just like soaping up your body and actually feeling how beautiful your skin is and your body is.
Yeah.
That is a good practice. And download Tantra 101. It's free. It's actually a really intensive, amazing 8-day journey that's going to support you to feel more ease, joy, and pleasure, as well as get rid of all the bullshit that's in the way of that. And then Sacred Sexuality is an 8-week, more in-depth course, and that can all be found on the website.
Yeah, awesome. Send me some links. I'll definitely make sure that they're all showing up for this interview as well. and people get access to, all the resources that you have. Awesome.
Well, thank you. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you. I love how you're a bastion of power and truth for the feminine. And yeah, I love all of your material. It's always so beautiful to drop in with you because I just can feel your genuine heart and your intelligence and expertise. It's great. Thank you for having me.
I send you lots of love. Thank you so much for your time and presence here today. I definitely had picked up some golden nuggets for myself too. So thank you for that. And I'm looking forward to the next one, whenever this is going to be.
Yeah, for sure. It's always fun.
Bye, love.
Bye, gorgeous.
Thanks for listening to the Love, Sex and Freedom podcast. For more great free resources, in-person and online workshops, and our retreats, find us on Instagram and Facebook at Embodied Awakening Academy or visit embodiedawakeningacademy.com.